Hello and welcome to the SBP Podcast, the voice of mobile film. I'm your host, Susie Botello, and you're listening to episode 62. If you walked into your friend's house tonight and it was dark, you would probably ask your friend why the lights aren't on. You would probably be concerned. But what if this was the first time you visited your friend at their place? I sometimes feel like this when I approach people and begin to discuss the power of storytelling, because not all people are aware of it. What would you tell your friend if they told you, yes, it's too dark for me to cook, it's too dark to see when I need to use the bathroom, and I don't even know how to fix it? Would you not tell them to turn on the light? Perhaps show them the light switch and then turn the light on for them? When it comes to storytelling, I encounter people who believe they don't know how to tell stories. We've all been sort of, conditioned to believe that we don't know how to tell stories, that storytelling is something that people need to learn to do, like a skill. Now, allow me to turn on the light for you. You've been telling stories your entire life. Yeah. When you began to speak as a baby, you said things like, Mama, or Dada. Now, beyond that, you can tell a story with 2 words. Want me to prove it to you? Okay. I ate. Now, what did you do when you heard those 2 words? The way that we communicate is storytelling. Now, if you're a conscious storyteller, you can build and expand on the words that you communicate for a reaction, a response, whatever. If you're a filmmaker, then you are a storyteller. And you don't need to learn to be a storyteller. Therefore, you can be a filmmaker. Okay, so that's not really a valid statement. But let me explain that to you. You ate. Now ask yourself, what, where, who, when, and how? Expand on that and use your imagination. Include a plot, a twist, perhaps a message, and then structure everything with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Now, visualize it as a movie. Pick up your smartphone, the one that you have right in your hand or in your pocket, and begin to produce a story into a film. Our guest in this episode was part of a story concept by a friend, Stef Harris, who is a storyteller like all of us. He was doing his job as a police officer one late night in a small town in New Zealand when he noticed the look of a service station all lit up in the dark night. And when he turned what he saw into a story, he told the story around the location and shared it with friends. He wrote a screenplay. He asked them what they thought about the story. And that is how the story of Blue Moon, a feature-length film shot with an iPhone, began. Listen to the person who shot the film with an iPhone share his story on how he was able to make an incredibly cinematic film using an iPhone. Now, I truly believe that some of you, especially if you're making short films, would be inspired by the director of photography for Blue Moon, Ryan O'Rourke. Hey everyone, welcome to the SBP Podcast. I am here with another member of the Blue Moon team, the feature film that's just gone viral all over the world, but filmed in New Zealand. I'm here with the DP, or for some of you who don't know what that is, the director of photography, Ryan O'Rourke. How you doing, Ryan?
Hi, Susie. I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks very much for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for coming on and being our guest. You know, like you're here. Where are you exactly in New Zealand right now?
I'm sitting in Nelson, which is at the top of the South Island, a beautiful spot, and it's probably about 40 kilometers away from Mochwaka, where we made this film.
Wow. And now for most of us here who are used to miles, how many?
Maybe, I don't know, 30, 28, something like that.
Oh, that's not bad.
No, it's not far.
No, not at all. That's very close. When you were filming this film, it took you guys about a total of 6 days, but spread out. Did that take a few weeks?
Oh, no, it was 6 nights in a row of, a 5-hour, the service station, the petrol station we filmed at was closed for 5 hours a night. So we had the service station for 5 hours a night for 6 nights in a row. So a total of 30 hours. It was hectic. It
was intense, huh? Where did you guys sleep? In the parking lot, or?
Yeah, that probably would have been a good idea. Various places. They had offers of accommodation for some of the cast and crew, and we were all over the place. But it was very, very busy nights.
Wow. Well, so why don't you, first of all, just mention a little bit about, or let's do this. I'm trying to pretend I'm psychic, and I'm reading the listeners right now, and they're saying, well, we may have already heard about Blue Moon. It's a feature film. It was shot with an iPhone 7, and you shot it. But tell us a little bit about Ryan O'Rourke and a little bit about your background.
Okay, so I've never shot a feature film before. This was the first full-length feature film that I've shot. I've never shot anything on a phone before, so that was a new experience as well. Done quite a lot of short films, and a couple of short films with Stef Harris, who was the writer and director for Blue Moon. And so that was really, really helpful going into this, having an established relationship with him and an understanding. I used to be a police officer. Stef Harris was also a police officer. Yeah. So that's how we met each other.
I was actually going to ask you, what's it like working for a cop, right? But I guess you're a cop too, so.
No, I think, we all understand each other.
Was that helpful in any way? Because, there were cops involved in this film.
Yeah, there were cops all the way through this film, some of the extras and some of the crew. I think it is. You go through the same sort of training, because New Zealand just has one national police force, so we've all been through the same sort of training, and then you all have similar sort of experiences in your career, and you have a bit of an understanding, and you can communicate quite effectively and efficiently with each other. So in a situation like this, where it can be quite stressful, especially with the time constraints that we had, that I think it definitely helped.
Well, I can't imagine. I just think that part of the story is really interesting, because I can't imagine any other place in the world where there are so many cops involved in making movies.
Maybe they just don't tell everyone.
Could be. Maybe they're just moonlighting, right, and not saying anything.
Yeah.
Maybe. So you guys, so you already knew Stef, and had you already met? Obviously in New Zealand, it's probably like the Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, the planet of the Lord of the Rings films. Had you guys met the actors, Jed Brophy and Mark Hadlow, before?
Yeah, I had. We'd done a test shoot about 3 months before we made the film, and they were both down for that, which was really helpful. But also, we'd done some other shooting with them on another script, just sort of some test shooting on another script as well for a couple of days in Wellington, probably about a year earlier, I think. So, yeah, I knew them as well.
And so that's another question I was going to ask you, if you had worked with him, or not just that, but also if you were nervous about shooting. So I didn't realize that this was your first feature film. So you probably really were very nervous about doing that, because you're committing to a feature, and then you're shooting with a camera, which is actually a phone, right?
Yeah, no, there was there was a lot going into it, and ahead of it, I was a bit nervous. But we did a lot of testing with the phone to get comfortable with it, and I did a lot of stuff on my own with the phone to get comfortable with shooting with it. And having those relationships with and understanding the way that Mark and Jed worked, and really having a pretty established relationship with Stef, that helped a lot. It was also probably the most terrifying thing for me going into this was the amount of trust that Stef placed in me. So that was quite scary for me, and he did. He just he had complete confidence. So I knew that I was going to have to live up to that confidence, and I obviously didn't want to let him down. So really committed to doing a good job. But then once we got into it, it was just so busy that I didn't really have time to think about that, and just concentrating on achieving the best results you can.
You guys, you had to now. You said you worked on short films before. Were they? Did you do a lot of hand holding? Hand camera shots, or mostly on tripods?
Been a mixture. It's probably mostly been on tripods, and some with shoulder mounted cameras. But yeah, I've never handheld a camera as much as we did in this. We used a gimbal, but there was some really long shots in this film, some really long dialogue scenes. And so, there was a lot of hand-holding there and moving. And, that got pretty intense at times.
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to keep it steady. You're using the gimbal. When you're using traditional cameras, it can weigh on you. But people don't realize, a phone is light, but you're still having to hold that steady and hold it up. And it can be pretty intense.
Yeah, that's right. When it went on, when you're holding it all night, it does, do start to get a bit of a shake on. We did use a monopod at times and a tripod for some of the shots, but mostly handheld. But Stef was really keen on wanting a lot of camera movement in there as much as we could. And so we were prepared to live with a little bit of movement in some of those shots.
Yeah, one of the cool things that I liked about when I was watching the film was that the third eye, the third person, you almost feel like you just happen to be there watching it from a real point of view. Even though most of the film was, the two main characters, and it was, Mark and Jed, doing a lot of dialogue. But you guys shot this pretty much chronologically, right?
Yeah. It was. I look back on it now, and it's just staggering. Some of the scenes were out of order, but mostly we went through the script in order. And just the actors were amazing. Mark and Jed were just absolutely incredible to work with. They just those really long dialogue scenes. Some of them went for more than 10 minutes, and they'd just nail them time after time after time. It was incredible working with professionals like that, and that's what probably really enabled us to get through this in 6 nights. The professionalism.
And then you had to shoot different camera angles for during the same scenes as well, right?
Yeah, so we were doing each of those scenes a number of times to get enough coverage.
And it really flowed very well. I mean, I know this is going to sound silly to you, who are you, right? But, you did a really good job for this being your first feature film. It's quite impressive.
Thanks very much, Susie. There's, when we consider the constraints that we had and what all the factors involved, I'm really, really happy with what we've achieved. I'm really, really proud of it. And it's really nice that it's getting some recognition around the world now too.
Yeah, you were just featured in a magazine, weren't you?
Yeah, so Australian Cinematographer magazine offered me the chance to write an article about how the filming had gone, and I did that, and that was just published in the June edition. So that was incredible being featured in there. And a number of film festivals all over the world at the moment. It really seems to be still picking up momentum.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, so I'm looking at it kind of a little bit, trying to step into your shoes a little bit and thinking, wow, I shot my first film my first, not your first film, my first feature film. I shot it for the first time with a phone, which people in the industry are still trying to nail that, but it's it's like this animal that's just shift changing all the time because the phones, come out with a new phone every year, and then there's so many of them. What do you think about the differences of that? Because, there are several cameras, right? Traditional cameras. And as a DP, you learn a few and you've got that down. But with phones, it's, they're all different.
Yeah, things are just changing so quickly. And even now, telling people that we shot this film on an iPhone 7, that seems quite dated already. It was only a year ago. So, things are changing really quickly, and the capabilities of those phones now is just incredible. I was quite worried, before we did the testing, I was quite worried that we were going to have overheating problems or that we were going to be dropping frames. I was expecting a lot of problems with it, but it actually went really, really smoothly. And we were really lucky that we had the app that we used to shoot the film was called Filmmaking Pro. Which has been used on a number of feature films now. Yeah. And we had some of the guys there from Filmmaking Pro who were giving us some advice about the best way to use the app. And with their advice and with the iPhones, we didn't actually have any trouble at all for the whole shoot. We didn't lose a single second of footage.
Yeah, and that's another thing. When you're using apps, they update too,
Yeah, everything's changing constantly and you've just got to stay on top of it. But I think, that's just how it is these days. You're probably going to be using a different camera for everything that you do, even how quickly new cameras, new film cameras are coming out. There's new cameras every year, and things have just changed so fast.
Yeah, it's one of the things you learn is, you really don't want to change cameras mid-shoot. On a production because each camera has their own look, You used just this one phone, but I know you used a drone for your aerial shot, but that was just for a very quick opening shot when he's on the bike, right?
Yeah, there's a little bit of drone footage in there and at the end as well. We had 3 iPhones that we were cycling through. So we'd be using one. And because you can't change the battery in the iPhone, that would drain down. When the battery got low, we'd swap it out for another iPhone, and then the phone we had been using would go away and have the footage downloaded and checked and backed up, and the phone would be charged, and then it all went quite smoothly. 3 phones worked really well.
And now, did the phone get hot at any point? Overheat?
No, we were worried about that actually. We did a bit of testing shooting in 4K, and the phones were getting pretty hot when we were testing. But we had a bit of advice from the Filmic Pro guys about the mode that we were shooting in, and we made some adjustments there and didn't have any problems with it. So that was great. We were able to shoot in 4K on an iPhone, just incredible, and no problems at all.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I'm listening to listeners sort of in the outer space. This hasn't aired yet or been published, but I can already hear that they would love to know what settings you use. Like, for example, there are certain settings that you set up on the native camera before you jump into the Filmic Pro app, right?
Right. Well, yeah. So we set it to record in 4K at the highest codec that it could, so the highest bit rate. Probably first of all, we deleted every app off there that we weren't using, so we got rid of as many apps off the phone as we could. Just left the Filmic Pro app and whatever Apple stuff we couldn't get rid of.
Airplane mode too?
Yeah, shot with the phones in airplane mode too, obviously, so we didn't get any interruptions, but also to reduce the drain on the batteries and just devote maximum processing power to the app. So it could keep up with all this 4K data that was coming in. What else did we do? So we locked the shutter speed to 180 degree shutter, so 1/48 of a second, and the frame rate at 24 frames per second, just to try and keep it all looking as filmic as possible, and so that the motion blur was what people would expect to see on a film, as opposed to phone footage. We shot with a natural look baked in. We were quite keen to shoot in log so that we'd have as much latitude as possible in post-production to do some colour grading and so on, play with the footage as much as we could in post-production.
What is log? Because that's being talked about a lot.
It's basically, it gives you a desaturated look, so there's no particular look baked in, but it just gives you a maximum latitude when in the post-production to change the look of the footage, so to put a grade over top of it with, if you want to make it look a different tint, a different colour, blue or green or something like that. Whereas if you shoot it with a look already baked in, you just don't have that same flexibility later on.
Using filters. I know there's a lot of people in short films. It's okay to play around with filters and things like that, I think. But when you're shooting something like a feature film, I think you should try and be as native as possible and do most of that look, right? The aesthetics in post, or what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. That was what we were hoping to do. But when we were having those overheating issues during the test. The test shoot, the advice from the Filmic Pro guys was that with the iPhone 7 anyway, it's probably changed since then with better phones and more processing power in the phones. But at that stage, if we were going to shoot in log, it required extra processing power from the phone, and so that was going to cause potentially some overheating, maybe some drop frames, possibly drain the battery a bit faster. So I was really worried about the overheating in particular. So we shot with a natural look baked in, which just meant we didn't have as much flexibility in post to play with the look of the film. But it did mean that we could shoot in 4K, which we felt was we really wanted to obtain the best quality pictures that we could.
We may have to talk to Judd, right? Because he did the post-production. He did the video editing.
Yeah, Judd did an amazing job, again, in a very, very short space of time. He's an awesome editor, particularly given the footage that I gave him. Well, he had to do a good job.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's talk about that for a second here. The footage that you gave him had to be pretty decent for him to give that film that cinematic look and feel during the production, post-production.
Well, it's very nice of you to say that. I'm always impressed by what he's managed to do with it, though. I'm really happy with how it's all turned out.
Yeah, I look at it like apple pie. If your apples have gone bad, you can be a great cook, but that apple pie is not going to be the same as if you use some good apples. And you gave him some good apples.
It's a lovely thing to say, Susie. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's one of the things, right now most people, unless they go to the film festivals, what they're seeing is the trailer. And the trailer right off the bat just has, first of all, you guys have good lighting, and that's important, right?
Oh, heck yeah, especially when you're shooting with such a small sensor.
Yeah, and you guys, so you had to share a little bit with people what you had to do. I mean, you're shooting at a gas station inside a convenience store. We have things like 7-Eleven and AM/PM and things like that here. And if you close your eyes and listen, you hear a lot of, bzzz and little fuzzy little sounds and things. But if you cover your ears and then look at everything, you see the flickering of the lights and things like that. How did you guys handle that stuff?
Yeah, that was a bit of an issue at times. Mostly we just rolled with it. We were shooting in a service station, and it was meant to be a service station, so we thought, well, that's kind of what people are going to expect to see and hear at 3 o'clock in the morning in a small service station in a small town in the top of the South Island of New Zealand. So mostly we just went with it, and it was fine. We did have I think it was one night where we had to replace a whole lot of bulbs that it was just too noisy. too much flickering going on. It was too distracting, but we were quite happy to live with a little bit of fluorescent buzz or hum and a bit of flickering light. The light levels inside the service station were pretty good, actually, so we didn't put any light in there at all, and we would have really struggled to shoot the film in 6 nights if we had have been lighting each scene. It would have been pretty much impossible to get that done, I think. So the iPhone handled the lighting in the service station really, really well. Outside, we struggled a little bit more. It was a big, it was the service station, or the gas station, was this little pool of light in a big dark night. And so if we were looking into the service station, it was fine. But if we were looking out from the service station, it was really dark, and the small sensor in the iPhone struggled with that. We did put some extra light on the gas station forecourt, but again, with the time frames, we weren't going to be able to move that light for each scene. So we just did what we could and went with it. And it held up pretty well, I think, considering it was really dark out there. So yeah, no, it went pretty well. Some of the other issues we had in the service station, though, would be the noise from all the fridges in there. So we had to turn those off, which meant there were a few soggy ice creams each morning.
Now, if I would have been there, I would have taken care of that right away.
Yeah. The other thing we weren't expecting, like we knew we were going to be shooting in a hall of mirrors, basically because of all the windows and the glass on the front of the fridges, but we weren't expecting all the cabinetry, all the the display cabinets and so on to be reflective as well. But they were all, a lot of them were red, and they were really like quite shiny and reflective, and so it was just a nightmare with reflections no matter which way we pointed the camera. So that meant we spent a heck of a lot of time trying to find a place for the boom operator to stand, and the rest of the crew spent a lot of time lying on the service station floor.
I worked on a film one time, and it was done in a restaurant, and everything was the what do you call that in the kitchen? Kind of like aluminum, metal refrigerators, yeah, and everything like that. And I was a script supervisor at the time, and I was looking at every little detail, and I was like, you can see the reflection of the lights, and you, the director, and you, the camera, right there on the other side of that. And the guy goes over there with the spray can and fades out all that stuff, and now you can't tell what that is anymore.
Nice.
I don't think that works as well on glass, though.
No, we could have done with a guy like that, though. That would have been really helpful.
How many people did you end up having in the crew that actually helped out with things? I mean, I know you had your principal people, but then on top of that, did any of your buddies, the extras or anything, pitch in?
Probably the guy, I think, with the toughest job on the whole film was Doug Brooks, who was an actor, but he was also the first AD, and he had a really full-on role. So he played Reuben in the film. So I think dual hatting like that, and in 2 really key roles, that was a really, really hard job, but he pulled it off really well. We had a core crew of probably, I don't know, maybe about 8 or 10. And, they just put the hours in and did a huge amount of work for us. It was all a bit of a blur, really, looking back on it.
Well, you were probably, so everybody's kind of got a bit of a role on something they want to do, especially during the time constraint you had. Because you said you had basically 5 hours a night. And when you think about it, that's, putting things up and breaking down, because you couldn't leave things there because that was an actual store, in a gas station. So you couldn't say, we're just going to leave this here, until tomorrow, right?
Yeah, no, that's right. The service station, gas station closed each night at midnight. But I think we were usually there from about 10:30, just starting to move their displays, gently encouraging the late shift person to go home a bit early, and sometimes starting filming while they were still open. So yeah, you're right. We did have to make a few changes each night, and the crew got very efficient at that. And then putting it all back again, usually after that opened. Actually, we didn't didn't manage to get it set up before they opened too often.
And there's a thing, like, you always leave the set exactly as it was when you entered, once you come upon it. That means, like, if there's a bag of trash in that corner, you put that bag of trash back. You don't throw it away. You never. That's kind of hard for people to know.
Yeah, no, we got good at that. And there was some, we had to take photos of where everything was and then put it back exactly as it was. And the same thing the next night. So, yeah.
Yeah, you guys had, now here's the other thing. Now we're talking about reflections of cabinets and windows, but you guys had a lot of little shiny little bags of, chips and candy and all that stuff there. How did you guys work around all that?
There was probably the main issue with that was with the firearms. So there's a few firearms in this film, and some of the chip bags got a bit damaged during some of the. That was quite amusing, but yeah, no, that was the main catastrophe. There was also some Easter eggs that went flying. It got a bit messy at times.
How did you? There's a, I'm not going to give away anything, but there was a fight scene, or two or something. There's some fight scenes, let's say that, and there's that really good one with Mark and Jed, and they did. I'm sure you guys had to do the blocking for that, but it looked pretty realistic. I mean, these are two guys that are older. Right? And they're struggling around, but like I said, it looked really realistic. How was that for you as the camera person?
Oh, that was definitely one of the highlights. Jed Brophy he's done a bit of that sort of thing in films, and he's just a master at it. He was definitely giving me some tips there about the best sort of camera placement to capture what was going to happen and to make it look realistic. And he had the whole thing worked out. We've got a lot to thank him for there.
What advice would you give some of the filmmakers on doing action scenes like that? Like, for example, we're talking about a lot of camera movement, and if you don't lock the exposure, the lighting changes from one angle to the next are going to affect your look. What advice would you give them?
I think you've got to be really familiar with your gear. It's just about probably doing it. You don't want to be putting the actors in a situation where they have to do it over and over again because you haven't quite got the settings right, or the settings have changed, or you didn't have everything on manual and the camera's gone and changed some setting itself. So I think you really need to be familiar with your camera and have got yourself to a point where you're confident that you can perform to the same sort of level as the actors are performing, because that's what it is really. So it's about knowing your gear and having the confidence in yourself, I suppose,
and making sure you're not the part of the fight, right? Because it's easy.
Don't get too close.
Yeah.
No, it was good fun. It was those scenes were awesome, and Jed and Mark did a great job, I think.
When you're so I'm thinking about filmmakers who have made a number of short films with their phone, because there are some filmmakers that have probably already made in the dozens of short films, and as with our film festival and everything, I'm trying to raise the bar to say, get out there. You've done some short films. Go make a feature length film now. Some of these guys have never worked professionally before outside of working professionally with a phone. What advice would you give them, as far as the differences between filming a short and filming a feature film? What things should they really concentrate on? Like, whatever you do, guys, don't forget this or don't do that.
To me, the biggest thing is trust with the director and also other members of the crew, because there's just so much going on. It's not something that maybe other people can, but I couldn't keep the whole chronology of the film in my head. And so I was taking in bits each night, but I just had to trust that, we were doing the right thing at the right time. But also the thing, I think it's really important that people do, if they can, make a feature, because features get noticed a lot more than short films do, I think. Short films, people who are passionate about film will go and watch a short film, or people involved in the industry or people for who it's their hobby will go and watch a short film. But they don't really get noticed outside of those circles, whereas feature films make much more of an impact. And I think you can make short film after short film after short film, but if you want to really get noticed, you've got to make a feature.
Now let me ask you about that. If you think that making a feature film on a phone will get you a little more media attention than making a feature film with a traditional camera. Now, I'm not talking about the story, the quality of the story in the film and so forth, but just a mere fact that you shot it with a phone.
I've been thinking about that lately, and I think you're right. I think at the moment that's still the case. Like, we're definitely not the first to make a feature film on a phone. It's been done years before us, but it's still a novelty. And I think maybe, another 5 years it won't be a novelty, but at the moment you definitely do get a bit more of a boost from the smartphone film festivals, and just the general novelty factor, I suppose, of making a feature film on a phone.
There's also, I'm all over this stuff. So for me, I go out and I do see some feature films, and they're just not, the story is there, but the quality is aesthetically or even with sound, it just is not there quality wise. And I think if you're going to make, I'm just trying to see what your feedback is on this, but if you're going to go all out and make a feature film, you really should try and make it look as good as possible, because it's going to get more attention than a short. And it's like if you're going to go standing on a stage full of 500,000 people as opposed to 10 people, you do want to look good, right?
Heck yeah. Well, if you're going to go to all this effort, why wouldn't you put your best foot forward? And that's probably one of the reasons why we chose to use the anamorphic lens on the front of the iPhone. So the Moondog Labs anamorphic lens that we use, we wanted it, although we were shooting it on a phone, we didn't want it to look like we'd just shot it on the phone we'd whipped out of our pocket. We wanted it to look as filmic as possible. And so we used the anamorphic lens to get that really wide aspect ratio. And it looked beautiful. And there's a lot of people that have commented, Jed Brophy was saying he's shown it to people in the industry and they haven't realized that it's been shot on a phone. We weren't trying to hide the fact that we were shooting on a phone, but we just wanted it to look as cinematic as possible. So why, if you're going to the effort of making a feature film, why wouldn't you want it to look as beautiful as possible? And why wouldn't you want to have the sound as good as you can possibly get it, and the performances and the story?
Yeah, just go all the way. And also, we're talking about the location, and it was really just one location, but aesthetically it was a very colorful setting that you guys had.
I think that comes right back to Stef's, when he first conceived of this film, he was standing on the forecourt, working as a police officer, standing on the forecourt at 3 o'clock in the morning or something, gassing up his patrol car, and just sort of looked at the scene there, and it was a quiet night, dark, and the service station was just this pool of light and surrounded by blackness. And I think that's quite a cool starting place, for a story that takes place at night when everybody else is asleep. The sort of stuff that goes on that people have no idea about, and that's exactly what Blue Moon is.
And for people out there who think they can't be a filmmaker, I almost feel like it's my job to inspire you all to do it, because, just like you, Ryan, myself, and our listeners, how many of us and how many times have we seen something or been somewhere or looked in a direction and said, wow, it's like a movie, right? Yeah,
that's right. And that's what I love is just being able to be a little bit creative and tell a story visually is what I love about the process of making films. I just find it really, really satisfying, and I love working with all the different disciplines, the different. I think you get different types of people in the different disciplines in a film crew, and they work differently. And you have to, although everyone's different, you have to cooperate together really, really well under quite a bit of pressure to produce a result. And I love the feeling when everything's going well, and you're creating this product that just wouldn't have existed if you hadn't had that level of cooperation.
Yeah, I always, it's one of the reasons I started this. I love filmmakers. And it's not just about the films; it's about the type of people that filmmakers are, where they're like the musketeers, all for one and one for all. They really are.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and you have to be to get a result, I think, because there's just there's so many ways that it can end badly, or that because everyone has to contribute at a high level to make it happen. So I love it. I love that sense of teamwork that you get, teamwork and creativity when it's all going well.
Was there any examples that you can share without someone getting upset of times that things, or maybe at least one thing that kind of really could have gone wrong had you not had the right team?
Oh, gee, that's a tough one to think of. There's just little things like we had, and this isn't really an example of teamwork, but like we had a fan there because every time we were using a firearm, there would be a lot of smoke generated, and we needed a fan to ventilate the gas station. And so at one stage, when the crew was packing up, and I just said what a good job they did before, but the fan actually got left outside the service station, and so the service station was open all day, and at some stage it got stolen. Oh. And so we showed up that night, and we didn't have the fan, and so they were able to check the security tapes and saw someone putting it in a vehicle, and the police were able to recover it for us the same day. So it's just things like that that do go wrong during the course of filming. So it was an interesting experience.
There's always all these little stories, and I'm sure if you guys all sit around and you start, it's like you said, you couldn't be aware of everything that was going on because you had your part too. But I'm sure every one of you, I've talked to, you're the fourth one, right? So, for me, it's really interesting to hear all the different points of view and the different little stories that you're all sharing with our listeners. I think they're getting a really great benefit from listening to all the perspectives, from the actors and the director, and you as a director of photography. Let me ask you something. Are you going to make another film with your phone?
I'll shoot on anything, I think. Yeah. I think that's my view, is that I'll use any. It's just a tool, isn't it? It's just another camera. And I think I'd be quite happy shooting another film on a phone. I'd like more than 6 nights to do it, and if possible. But yeah, I'm happy to use any camera, because I think it doesn't matter what camera you're using. There's always limitations. The camera might be really big and it takes a long time to set up, or I don't know. There's always limitations to every camera that I've ever used, and the iPhone's no different to that. So happy to use whatever tool is either available or appropriate or affordable. Well,
yeah, but you're a DP. You like a challenge.
Yeah, I do. I do like picking up a new camera or an old camera and finding out what its strengths are and what the best way to use it is. Yeah, I enjoy that.
What do you think about the storytelling aspect of the small camera, the phone, as opposed to, the big camera? Because I know you had a lot of shots where, would they have worked with a regular camera? Would you have been able? I'm sure you would have, because I believe in you guys so much. But would you really have struggled with a traditional camera in making this film?
We could have done it. It just would have taken a lot more time, a heck of a lot more time to set up and move between shots. And also, like, the space we had in the service station was very, very limited. It's quite a small gas station. So, yeah, it would have been a lot more challenging, I think. But also, we potentially wouldn't have got the same results because the feedback from the actors, Mark and Jed, is that they love working with that smaller camera. They've been obviously on some huge films, The Lord of the Rings and so on, and, working with huge camera setups and huge crews. But they found the feedback from them is that they found working with the iPhone a lot less intrusive on their performances. And because some of the things we were shooting were really long dialogue scenes, we're right up close, but it doesn't feel like we're in their face with a huge camera, and they're not having to do one shot and then take a break for half an hour while something gets reset or longer, and then get back into character and try and deliver another performance exactly the same as the one before. So because we could move so fast, we could shoot from one side of the conversation and then move around to the other side and just sort of carry on. And it was a lot less intrusive, and we weren't interrupting their performances as much. So I think the feedback is they really enjoyed working with the iPhone and the smaller camera.
Is there anything that you've learned that causes you to think there may be something if you could or would do another film, maybe in a small, tight location like this, another feature, same iPhone? Is there something that you would change?
Probably the biggest issue for me was the small screen on the iPhone and monitoring it, I suppose, and just, looking for reflections and getting focus exactly right. And because we're in such of a hurry, there wasn't a lot of monitoring that went on or playback. So it would be really good to be able to have a little bit more time just to check things as we went, and to and just make sure when we're framing up that, we haven't got anything in the shot that we don't want to be there, and focus is exactly right.
Yeah, so being able to play it back. I mean, and you can so easily too, but yeah, you guys really were tight on on that time.
Yeah, no, we had options there to play it back. We had a big TV available, we had an iPad available, we had a laptop there, and it was all quite easy to do. It was mostly the time restriction that stopped us doing that.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too for a feature film versus a short film, that you really, really do want to have something there where you can dump your footage into and start again, right?
Yeah, so we had a great team doing that. So the phone would go off and get downloaded and backed up onto 3 different hard drives just immediately we finished shooting with it. So we had that assurance that the footage was safe. So we ended up with 4 copies of it, one on the laptop and then 3 hard drives. And that was checked before the phone was erased and then came back again. And there was some continuity stuff there because we didn't shoot the whole thing in order. So being able to check that was really important too.
Yeah, there's always a little cheating.
There's always continuity stuff.
Right. Well, yeah, I should know about that. I was, yeah. Well, you know what? We're reaching almost an hour already. And I'm not even done yet, but how about I ask you one more question, and I'll just leave you for the topic of this. What would you say to, aspiring filmmakers who, they feel comfortable in shooting short films, but they can't get their foot into the feature film waters yet? What would you say to really inspire them to go for it?
I'd say it's been the best filmmaking experience that I've had. It's just everything else pales into insignificance in comparison to making a feature. I've loved every minute of it. I'm completely indebted to Stef for the trust that he placed in me. And I'd say it's never been easier or more accessible, I suppose, to make a feature than it has now. If you've got a good story and you want to tell it, then the technology's never been more in reach. And I think that's really cool. I think, that those barriers that used to exist even 10 years ago, even less, that they just aren't there anymore. And anyone can do this. It's, I see my kids have been picking up phones and going out. They've been borrowing the gimbal that we used on this film, and they're going out and telling little stories themselves, and they're coming home and editing them, doing the whole thing. I'm going to be replaced fairly shortly, but it's just so cool that anyone can be a visual storyteller these days.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
You know, the International Mobile Film Festival in San Diego, we were all ages in case your kids want to submit a film or 2 or 3.
Yeah. They probably will be in a few years. Yeah. It's very cool though, isn't it? It's fantastic to make something a little bit creative and to actually produce it and get it out there and have others see it and actually enjoy it and appreciate it. And I just find the whole process really cool.
Ryan, you know what's really cool too? Having Dad make a film and be a part of the same film festival competing with your film, because that's actually happened before with a girl who was 11 years old, made a little film on her iPhone, and the father made another film, and they shared the red carpet and everything in our film festival before.
That is very, very cool.
Yeah.
I think if I was the dad, you could be seeing how you were being replaced. That would be how I'd be feeling. I think also very proud, but you could see, oh man, this is the beginning of the end.
Right? Who's the boss of the house now? Right? The one that's always been the kid.
Yeah.
So, wow. Well, hey, it's been a really great experience. I hope and I'm sure our listeners learned a lot from this, and I hope they're really, truly inspired to start making some feature-length films because, they do have a good opportunity for getting some distribution, which is always the dream, right?
Yeah, there's so many opportunities out there now and so many people that are just waiting for a film, a feature film to come along. And the support we've had has just been, and from people like yourself as well, Susie, the support we've had has just been absolutely incredible. And we're just so grateful.
Yeah, it's you guys are a testament that, and we're still, I forget because it's been my world for so long, but we're still in the early stages of this. We're the tip of the iceberg still in the industry.
Yeah. So it's a great time to get out and do it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, say goodbye to our listeners.
Goodbye, Susie's listeners. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Bye, guys.